Manchester. Today it's a city of music and football, of scientific breakthroughs and industrial heritage. It's where Oasis battled Blur, where Manchester United and Manchester make the world. Using AI technology, we can transform old engravings and historical photographs into vivid, realistic scenes, bringing Manchester's extraordinary past back to life before your eyes. We begin with the Romans. It is the year 79 AD. Governor Gnaeus Julius Agricola is pushing Rome's frontier northward. The legions need a fort to control the routes between Chester and York. They select a sandstone bluff where two rivers meet, the Medlic and the Irwell. The local Brigantes people call the hill something like breast-shaped. In Latin, that name becomes Memusium. On that bluff, the Romans build a fort capable of housing about 500 auxiliary soldiers. This is frontier architecture, a rectangular fort with earthen ramparts and wooden palisades, later rebuilt in stone. Outside the walls of Vicus, a small civilian settlement, grows, traders, craftsmen, families of soldiers. They construct a bathhouse, a mansio, a kind of Roman inn for official travelers. Pottery is made, grain is ground. Many of the troops come from what is now Spain, Germany, and North Africa. Life at Memusium is practical and austere, cold, wet, and far from Rome's Mediterranean heart, but steady. For 3 centuries, the fort and its settlement hold the frontier. Then, in 410 AD, Roman rule in Britain collapses and the legions withdraw. The official infrastructure decays. Stones from walls are taken for other buildings, roads begin to crack, and the civilian settlement is largely abandoned. The Romans leave behind masonry and place names, but little continuous record. Memusium fades into obscurity. We know almost nothing about Manchester between the Roman withdrawal and the Norman conquest. Over time the name shifts. Memusium will be heard in Old English as Memechester, and, centuries later, as Manchester. If there was an Anglo-Saxon village here, perhaps even a church, the records do not survive. When the Domesday Book is compiled in 1086, the place earns only the briefest notice. It is recorded as part of the manor of Salford. Population at that point is measured in the low hundreds, a scatter of wooden houses beside the rivers. Growth is slow, but steady. In 1222, a lord of the manor obtains permission to hold a market. Markets create trade. Trade creates money. The settlement consolidates around the market cross. A parish church, St. Mary's, the building that will later become Manchester Cathedral, stands on the site of earlier Saxon foundations and, in the 1300s, is rebuilt in perpendicular Gothic style. By 1400, the town remains small by national standards, perhaps 1,500 people, hemmed in by marsh and floodplain, with rivers that run high and fields that turn to mud. Its economic strength is plain and provincial, wool from the surrounding Lancashire countryside. Cloth and wool are worked at home and in small workshops. It is a modest, local industry, but it sustains the town. The Reformation brings institutional change. The church at Manchester had been made a collegiate church in 1421, run by a college of priests rather than a monastery, and it survives the upheaval of the 1530s when Henry VIII dissolves the monasteries. The town, not heavily monastic to begin with, is spared the wholesale ruin seen elsewhere, and the collegiate structures endure in altered form. In the 17th century, political conflict puts Manchester on the national stage. During the English Civil War, Manchester declares for Parliament. In 1642, royalist forces attack the town. Its defenders, largely local militia, armed with whatever they can muster, manage to hold them off. Manchester gains a reputation as a parliamentarian stronghold. By about 1650, the population has risen to perhaps 5,000. A grammar school, founded in 1515, educates local boys. Some wealth flows from textiles, and the town begins to look less like a village and more like a commercial centre. Everything changes in the later 17th and the 18th centuries. From the late 1600s, cotton cloth imported from India becomes fashionable in England, lighter than wool, easy to wash and vivid in dye. Britain does not grow cotton. The raw fibre arrives from plantations in the American South and the Caribbean, worked by enslaved Africans. Ships leave British ports carrying manufactured goods to Africa, enslaved people to the Americas, and raw commodities such as cotton back to Britain. They trade those goods for enslaved people. They pack those people into ships in horrific conditions and carry them to the Americas. The ships return to Britain laden with raw cotton, sugar, and tobacco. This is the triangular trade, and Manchester sits at the heart of it. Lancashire, with its damp climate ideal for working cotton, becomes the centre of cotton manufacturing. At first, production stays in the home, a genuine cottage industry. Spinners turn spinning wheels in their houses. Weavers work handlooms in their cottages. Merchants collect the finished cloth and sell it on, often back to plantation owners who use it to clothe the people they have enslaved. Then the inventions begin. In 1764, James Hargreaves invents the spinning jenny, a machine that can spin multiple threads at once. In 1769, Richard Arkwright patents the water frame, a spinning machine powered by water. In 1779, Samuel Crompton combines these ideas into the spinning mule. Suddenly, one operator with a machine can do the work of dozens. Those machines are too large and too costly for cottages. They require power, first water wheels, then steam engines, and buildings big enough to hold them. The factory is born. In the 1780s and 1790s, the first cotton mills rise in Manchester and the surrounding towns. Multi-story brick buildings, filled with machines, driven increasingly by steam, employing hundreds of workers under a single roof. By 1800, Manchester is no longer merely a market town. It is being remade into an industrial city. By 1801, the population is around 70,000. Cotton is king. The mills dominate the skyline. Steam engines fill the air with smoke. This is the future, and it is being built here. But the human cost is staggering. Workers are crammed into back-to-back terraces and narrow courts. Whole families sharing single rooms with no sanitation and no clean water. Disease spreads easily. Factories run 12, 14, even 16 hours a day. Children as young as 5 or 6 work in the mills. Small hands sent under machines to gather loose cotton. Accidents are common. Lungs clog with cotton dust. The average life expectancy in 1840s Manchester is just 25 years. Still, people keep coming. What choice do they have? The countryside offers no work. At least in Manchester there are wages, however meagre. Irish immigrants flood in, especially after the potato famine of the 1840s. The city expands in all directions, chaotic and unplanned. Yet the wealth being generated is extraordinary. In the 1830s, Manchester and the surrounding towns produce most of the world's cotton goods. Cottonopolis, they call it. The irony is brutal. Some of the poorest people in England are processing cotton picked by enslaved people in America. Neither group sees much of the wealth they create. The mill owners, the merchants, the middlemen, they're getting rich. Everyone else struggles to survive. And many of Manchester's workers are beginning to ask, why can't we vote? By 1819, the frustration has reached breaking point. Manchester is one of England's largest cities, yet it has no members of parliament. Most working people have no say in how they are governed, no voice in the laws that control their lives. On August 16, 1819, a crowd gathers at St. Peter's Field. 60 to 80,000 people, men, women, children, come peacefully to hear Henry Hunt speak about parliamentary reform. They are dressed in their Sunday best. Families bring picnic baskets. Banners call for liberty and representation. The local magistrates panic at the size of the crowd. They order the arrest of Hunt. They send in the local yeomanry, part-time cavalry, many of them drunk, armed with sabres. What happens next is carnage. The yeomanry charge into the packed crowd, slashing with their swords at anyone in their way. People scream, try to run, trip over each other. The professional soldiers, the 15th Hussars, are then ordered in. The stampede intensifies. When it is over, 15 people are killed. Over 600 are injured, many with sabre wounds. Hunt and the other organisers are arrested and imprisoned. The name sticks. Peterloo, a bitter mockery of Waterloo. This was not a glorious victory. This was the British state attacking its own people for demanding basic rights. Peterloo does not win reform immediately, but it plants seeds. The memory of that day galvanizes the movement for change. Manchester's workers will eventually gain political power to match their economic importance. 11 years after Peterloo, Manchester makes history again, but this time with innovation, not violence. On the 15th of September, 1830, a massive crowd gathers near Liverpool Road for the opening of the world's first modern passenger railway. George Stephenson's locomotive, the Rocket, will pull carriages between Liverpool and Manchester at the previously unimaginable speed of 30 miles per hour. A journey that once took a full day by canal will now take less than 2 hours. The day should be triumphant. Instead, it turns tragic. William Huskisson, a member of Parliament, steps out of his carriage to greet the Duke of Wellington. Distracted, he wanders onto the track. The rocket strikes him. He dies that evening, the first railway passenger fatality in history. Even so, the railway changes everything. Within a decade, rails radiate out from Manchester in every direction. Raw cotton pours in faster than ever. Finished cloth flows out to markets across the globe. The industrial system becomes more efficient, more profitable, and more dominant. Manchester is connecting to the world. By the 1830s and 1840s, the anti-slavery movement is strengthening in Britain. More people confront the moral horror of slavery. Britain abolished the slave trade in 1807, and slavery itself in its colonies in 1833. Manchester, however, is conflicted. The cotton still has to come from somewhere. American slavery continues, and many Manchester mill owners do not want to discuss the origin of their raw material. It is uncomfortable. It is bad for business. Yet many Manchester workers see the link. They are exploited by mill owners, and enslaved people are exploited by plantation owners. The system is the same, only differing in degree of brutality. In 1842, a young German, Friedrich Engels, arrives in Manchester to work in his father's cotton business. He is 22 years old, well-educated and from a wealthy family. Nothing has prepared him for what he sees. Engels walks through the slums and documents the cellars where families live in darkness and damp, the open sewers, the children with rickets, the workers coughing up blood from cotton lung. He sees the mills, the relentless machinery, the 14-hour shifts, the casual cruelty. In 1845, he publishes The Condition of the Working Class in England, a devastating exposé of industrial capitalism at its worst. Engels meets Karl Marx. They become lifelong collaborators and in 1848 write the Communist Manifesto. Later, money from Engels' family cotton mill helps fund Marx's research for Das Kapital. Then, in 1861, everything comes to a head. The American Civil War begins. When the Union Navy moved to blockade Confederate ports, the consequences were immediate for Manchester. Within months, raw cotton stopped arriving from the American South and the city's mills began to run out of supply.